3, 2, 1. Yay! Guys, it's been a month since Nintendo released Tears of the Kingdom, which means in our current cycle, it counts as a retro game. So welcome to the Podtendo podcast, Tears of the Kingdom Chronicles. I'm your co-host, Mick, and I'm joined by...
Tyson.
Man, what an old game we're playing today.
Man, I love playing retro games. There's just something about like an older game that you can just really sink your teeth into.
It is nice. It is solid. So, with Tears of the Kingdom officially becoming a retro game, we're allowed to talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. And just like we did with Breath of the Wild Chronicles way back in the day, we're looking like almost 5 years or something like that. We're just going to be documenting, detailing our experience with this fun Zelda game. A little bit of housekeeping off the top. Today's going to be a short episode. We're probably looking at literally the opening cutscene and maybe the lore that is mentioned. Next week, we're coming back. We're going to be talking about all the gameplay, the first, 8 or so, maybe 10 hours of this game, kind of where we're at. And then we're going to get back to our regular schedule. So you'll have a video game. I believe it's Banjo-Kazooie. There's X-Men movies right after that. And just based on the way our time allotments work. So shorter show today. And we're going to be looking again, just kind of opening story and some lore stuff that I wanted to dive into. So initial feelings even. You can be like, oh, was I excited? Was I not? So does that work for you, Mr. Co-host?
Yeah. No, I'm very excited.
Cool.
I guess should we start with kind of like how our initial or our hype feelings for the game, or just get into the notes?
I don't have a big hype cycle of myself, which is why I don't play a lot of new games, which is why I'm on a retro cycle, which is why I can buy a game in 6 months, a year, 2 years after it's been released, grab it way cheaper, play it at my own leisure, and then kind of join the discourse afterwards, right? So I'm never usually part of the initial discourse, but that's how I view these things. I don't have a lot of hype. I did pre-order this game, and then had a run of like 3 weeks of work where I only had 1 day off, and this was released during that time. So not a lot of hype, but it was one of the bright beacons that kept me going during a dark time of my life. Yourself, how hyped were you for this experience?
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those games where I was looking at. This is one of the few games I was really looking forward to in the year. So yeah, I don't usually pre-order stuff, but I definitely pre-ordered this because I was like, yeah, I'm literally gonna buy this. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been good. It's not like something I'm like, oh, I couldn't wait for the day, and then all of a sudden it was like, I was just kind of like, oh, hey, that comes out today, doesn't it? It's like sweet. Yeah, I'm excited to play this.
I'm as an adult with enough interests that aren't just video games, and like I'm also playing like other retro video games too. So it doesn't usually sit in the front of my mind. But yeah, I was pretty excited when it came out for the most part. Now, big spoiler disclaimer: we're talking about stuff in this game. If you haven't played it and you don't want stuff spoiled, stop listening now. And again, we have a little bit of time, so we're gonna go into just basically the beginning and some lore today, because I do think that deserves a little bit of runway, a little bit of a discussion, and then we'll kind of get you primed up for next week. So, the story of this game is sometime after the events of Breath of the Wild, Zelda and Link are exploring some caverns that have opened up and releasing some evil into Hyrule. During their exploration, they find murals depicting the imprisoning war, and I was like, that's from A Link to the Past. All right, I'm in. They then walk away from the murals. I'm like, no, I have questions. Can we go back? So that's what today's show is. I have some questions. At the far end of the chamber, they find a mummified body of an ancient evil being held down by an ancient hand. The seal breaks. The mummy lives. Link tries to save Zelda, but she disappears, and he loses his right arm and the Master Sword. Oh my gosh. Pretty cool opening. Like, better than Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that this was kind of like a pure response to the criticism of Breath of the Wild, because that is one of the fairest like criticisms you can throw at that game. Is like there's just literally no story at the beginning of the game, just kind of drops you into it. This was like, and everybody kind of was like, there's like barely any dialogue, barely any story. Like, what's actually happening in this game? So here they were like, no, here's your characters. They're going to interact for a bit. It was really well done. I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than Breath of the Wild.
Voice acting in Zelda games, it's never going to sit right because Link is a silent protagonist. So the one thing that stood out to me is as Zelda's talking to Link and Link's just standing there nodding. And I'm like, when it's just dialogue bubbles, like, you can always believe that Link has a response. Like, yeah, sure, that sounds good, right? Because sometimes characters are like, oh, what's that you say? You're an explorer? Yeah, sure, right. Sure thing, Mr. Hero. Ha ha ha. And they, like, laugh at you. But in this game, you literally, like, they're talking to you, and you just stand there and look at them blankly. And I'm like, all right. That, it just doesn't quite work. Don't give Link a voice. Don't you dare give Link a voice. But it's not bad. Yeah, so with that, cool. All right.
Yeah. That is a very good point, because you don't think about that stuff until it actually is like glaring in your face, and you're like, oh, this is kind of clunky.
It's definitely archaic. I don't know how they're going to evolve, and that's probably like the biggest hang up. This is great. The fact that Zelda or Nintendo again hammers their system. They know their hardware in and out, and they give you a pretty epic adventure. When we get into it, guys, this is a big game. The fact that they're running this on the Switch, it looks good, it runs well. There's like little to no glitch. Like, it's an excellent mastercraft and that's what you expect from Nintendo, right? So, however, though, guys, they mentioned A Link to the Past, and you know what the Podtendo podcast loves?
A Link to the Past.
No, we love. Oh God, man, how many times have you seen the imprisoning war on that opening scroll, and you're like, oh, that is interesting. What is going on there? So I have a little blurb written down. This is the lore. The imprisoning war is the lore that exists before this game. Oh no, my sentence doesn't make sense. No. So based on some basic research I did, apparently there's 2 separate events. So the imprisoning war in this game may not be the same as Link to the Past, but let's look at A Link to the Past and just refresh us a little bit. Maybe like theorize, and then shut ourselves down in like a month when we're like, yeah, that's not right. So the imprisoning war takes place before A Link to the Past. And it was the first time in the series that Ganon's history was explained. It was later revealed to stem that the events that occurred in Ocarina of Time are in fact the imprisoning war. It was a conflict that ensued after Ganondorf, the demon thief, entered the sacred realm, also known as the Golden Land, and laid claim to the Triforce, becoming Ganon, the demon king. Ganondorf's attainment of the Triforce tainted the Golden Land, transforming it into Dark World, and Ganondorf himself into a beast named Ganon. He launched an invasion against Hyrule with a new army of monsters made up of people from Hyrule that came seeking the power of the golden power for themselves. The invasion was repelled by knights of Hyrule who gave their lives almost to the last to protect the 7 stages as they cast a seal on the Dark World, trapping Ganon and his armies inside and restoring peace to Hyrule. So there you go. The imprisoning war kind of is the Ocarina of Time story. Alluded to A Link to the Past, and A Link to the Past is the exact results.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I guess like Ocarina of Time is kind of like the setup to that whole Fallout, because it's essentially like, you know, the timeline is like, you know, Link's victorious, goes back in time and lives as a kid, and they lock up Ganondorf, yada yada. That whole Fallout. So it's interesting. Lore in Zelda games always tricky, but I'm just happy that they're actually like trying to give us a story. And yeah, I not gonna lie, I tried to find. I was like, is there a camera like that I can just like take pictures in this game? Because I know in Breath of the Wild you can take pictures.
Yeah.
So I kept like looking for the picture button, so I was like, could take pictures of all the murals and like look at it later. But I'm like, I guess screenshots work.
Yeah, that's fair. Nice. Yeah, and I'm sure people on the internet will kind of dive through and pick this apart, and it'll be videos that we watch for a while. Now, however, we do know that this being that is discovered in the tomb, I'm guessing, is Ganon or like Demise from Skyward Sword. So already the imprisoning war somehow alludes to the events of Skyward Sword, and I know there's some type of war that's alluded to on the ground in that game that causes Skyloft and all the people of like Hyrule, or the Skyloftians, whatever you want to call them, to raise to the air. But then we also meet like a Birdman who calls himself Rauru, and Rauru is a Stage of Light, who was an owl at one point in Ocarina of Time, but like he's a man in this one. So
there's lots of bird people in
this game, but they like come from the future, because that's what like the Zoras evolve into. So like, was there a different race of bird people? Did they become the Skyloft, or like the Loftwings, the birds from Skyward Sword? there's a lot going on, and like Tyson said, it's nice that they include lore in their Zelda games. I don't know if they're going to land this plane, to be honest with you. I don't think, as a Zelda historian, as a fan of the series, I'm going to be. I don't think I'm going to be satisfied with the results of this.
I think we are. Because I think it's gonna be yeah. I think Nintendo knows what they're doing, and it's yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that the ending's gonna be really well done. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I do know that there are stories. So in the previous game, there was like memories you could unlock with you and Zelda going around, just doing kind of some like basic research in Hyrule before the events of Breath of the Wild. They kind of help to kind of flesh out the backstory. Similar events, they have like 12 events that kind of explain what happens to Zelda after she disappears. And just kind of her little journey and what's going on. So that and that kind of leads to obtaining like the Master Sword again and fighting Ganon and doing all those, so I'm curious to see kind of how this works, how this new villain, is it just Ganon? Do we get more backstory on him? But as of right now, I can't imagine the imprisoning war. And I mean, in fact, I know that from our research, right? And that's a little disappointing that they didn't like directly tie in a link to the past to this game. And that's sad.
Yeah. They just need more references to Link to the Past.
It's just a mess, and like honestly, I don't like Skyward Sword. I think it's broken. The sword mechanic was cool, but like almost everything else in that game was just like absolutely abysmal. So the fact that we're now calling back to weird like Skyloss, and now Skyward Sword is such a big part of the lore of this series.
It's okay, Nick. It's okay. Don't worry. Skyward Sword is not Tears of the Kingdom. You'll be safe. It'll be okay.
But they brought it back. I'm in the sky again. And I'm like, I don't want to be in the sky. That was where all the. Anyways.
That's just a gameplay feature.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
I know. But it's one of those things where I don't know. So I'm curious to see where it goes. Anything without spoiling anything else. You haven't come into like weird lore further on in the game, right? So peek maybe a sneak peek for next week's episode. Have you found any cool like lore, or are you just kind of nothing major jumping out at you?
Nothing major jumping out. I'm literally just running around collecting shrines.
Cool.
And having fun with that. I'm trying to push that off and just get all the side quests and done basically.
Okay, awesome. So there you go. So we reviewed kind of our initial hype coming into this. Why we're a little bit late. Well, we were also just busy both in our lives, so this is going to work for us. There you go. So there's our introduction. There's kind of the explanation of what the imprisoning war was. And I'm excited to kind of get back into this game and figure out what the imprisoning war actually is. So without that, see you guys back here next week, and let's keep talking Tears of the Kingdom.
Absolutely. See you next time.